Hello everyone. Let's add an interface to call our endpoints to check their functionality until we've written the front end or tests. Right now, we're interested in the signup endpoint. Let's add the interface. There are different tools for this, and in practice, you might not really need them much in the future, but just in case, I'll show you how to use them. So, they might not be necessary because you will have enough with tests, or you'll be writing the front end for your endpoints right away. But there can be situations where this doesn't happen, then these tools will be helpful. Let's add a thing called tRPC Playground. All right, let's go. It needs to be installed in the backend. tRPC Playground. So let's go to our file on the backend, which declares tRPC. And import, installed, tRPC Playground, its wrapper for Express handler. Okay, and create an endpoint that will work with this tRPC Playground. Here we have this function. I remind you, it is called in the index.ts file, and it kind of declares our tRPC for Express. Well, we'll also add the declaration of tRPC Playground endpoint to this function. How does it look? Here we specify our endpoint for the playground. It is important to specify the endpoint where we actually use tRPC. Here he needs to specify which endpoint he will be used on. So these two lines are identical, and these two lines are identical. Most likely, they will be named the same way for you. We pass the tRPC router here, and also, since we are using SuperJSON, we need to pass it here as well. It complains that this thing needs to be called with a wait. Well, that's how they set it up in tRPC Playground. This thing returns a promise, and you have to wait for it to complete. Therefore, this function becomes synchronous, and accordingly, in the main index file, you also need to wait for this function to complete. It now calls a promise. We will wait for it. Okay, so, Playground. Let's check if we haven't broken our backend. It's complaining. Let's restart it. Okay, all done. It's not broken. Let's now take a look at this playground. All right, adding a new tab. tRPC Playground. And we now have an interface like this. Let's get acquainted with it. Here in the query builder, we can see what mutations we have. Here are just some tabs. We can create them and write something here. We can click on Sign Up, and it will show us a hint of what we can output here. It's displayed in the format we roughly use on the front end. Let's press Insert. It simply adds it bluntly. Let's erase this line. Press Insert. We now have this function inserted. Below, you see an export and two quotes. It's just needed for an internal function. It works, doesn't affect anything, except it won't work without it. So, we call the suggested option and see an error. Validation error. We've been told that the username must have at least one character. Also, that the username does not match the regex. Also, the password is too short. So, that's the format we get. Let's fix this. Let's enter here, for example, the nickname, ISD. Password, 1, 2, 3, 4. Run it. Oh, great, we got back true. What kind of true is this? Let's look at our registration endpoint. We were just returning true here, so that's why we got it back. Now let's try calling this function again. We should see an error saying a user with this nickname already exists. Call it. And it tells us, yes, a user with this nickname already exists. That's it. This way, you can test all your endpoints in this tRPC Playground. Thank you all. Let's move on.